Welcome to month 3 of our Block of the Month 2022. You can join our group on Facebook called The Quilted Forest Friends to get a PDF of this version from the files there, or you can push pause and write down the information you need, or you can screenshot the information and print it at home. This month's block is actually a row of 4 blocks that are 8.5 inches to get a row that is 8.5 by 32.5. From a light or a background fabric, cut one strip that is 5.25 inches by the width of fabric. You will subcut that strip into 8 squares, 5.25 by 5.25, and then bisect each of those squares twice, corner to corner, for 32 triangles. From the medium fabric, you need to cut 2 strips that are 1 7/8 inch by the width of fabric. I start cutting at the 3 3/4 mark, and then I go back and cut on the 1 7/8 inch mark. After your strips are cut, you need to subcut 32 squares that will measure 1 7/8 by 1 7/8. And again, I'm cutting on the 3 3/4 inch mark and then backtracking to the 1 7/8 inch mark. From the dark fabric, you need to cut 2 strips that are 3.25 inches by the width of the fabric. I cut my fabric first at 6.5 and then worked back to the 3.25 inch mark. From these strips, you need to cut 16 squares that measure 3.25 by 3.25. Each of these squares will be bisected twice each, corner to corner, to get 64 triangles. I am making 3 versions of this block. One that is bright batiks, one that is red, white, and blue, and then one where I'm using a black background with bright colored fabrics. It's time to sew. Make sure you're piecing with 1/4 inch seam allowances. We are going to start by piecing the dark triangles to a side of a 1 7/8 by 1 7/8 inch medium square. You only need to line up the flat edges of the triangle to the square. Don't worry about the points that hang off the end. I love keeping my blade saver thread cutter handy to help me cut these pieces apart. It's time to press before we move on to the next step, and you're going to press toward the triangle, and you want to be a little gentle with these so you don't stretch them out of shape. I like to stack my pieces kind of on top of each other as I'm pressing. This helps me count them to make sure that I've had the right amount and I'm not missing a piece. And also I think it helps them lay a little flatter because I press them just a little bit longer when they're in the stack. It's time to go back to the sewing machine to add the other triangle on the other side. Make sure that you are stacking these correctly, and I always have the other triangle on the bottom. Again, you don't want to pay attention to the points that hang off the edge. Just make sure that the flat sides of the square and the triangle line up. I flipped over the pile so that I have the seam up on the pieced unit already, so that I just have to pick it up and place it on the triangle. I don't have to turn it over first. It's one of those little tricks I learned to help me make my piecing go a little bit faster. It's time to go back to the ironing board and press these units. We are also pressing these toward the triangle unit, so you don't need to worry about trimming those little dog ears off yet. Just leave those on there, don't worry about them, and get all these pieces pressed. Now it's time to piece the light triangle to this unit. And when you send these through the machine, you want to make sure that they all look exactly the same. If you have one going a different direction or seam on the other end, you'll have to use the seam ripper, so you don't want to do that. So make sure when you're shoving them through the machine that they all look exactly the same. For me, I decided to put the light triangle on top. That made it easier for me to remember how to send it through. For this unit, you are going to want to press toward the light triangle. As you're pressing, make sure not to pull on the sides of the triangle to stretch it out of shape. You just want to use a nice gentle touch with it. I'm staying on track with getting all three of my colorways done. And here's the red, white, and blue, and the black background with the colorful prints. It's back to the sewing machine to put these triangle units together with each other, and you are going to nest these seams together and then sew with a 1/4 inch seam. We are making 16 of these blocks. Before I press, I'm going to stack up all my blocks so they look the same, and I'm going to press towards one side, and I want all my blocks to look the same. Now that the blocks are ironed, we're going to trim them to 4.5 inches square. Now is the time to worry about the little points and the triangle tips. So I'm using my block lock ruler on the seam that I pressed to one side, and that helps me get everything nice and accurate, trim off all those little pieces, and my squares are perfect. I used to just trim off the little points, but what I found is if I'm using the ruler, it helps my blocks be perfect, so when I'm piecing the next sections together, they turn out much better. It's time to sew these blocks into sets of 2. You will be making 8 sets of 2 blocks. Because of the way that these are pressed, when you're putting these 2 blocks together, right sides together, you want to find on one side where the seams go towards the center, and when you're sewing it to the other one, you want those seams to go out. So sometimes I had to flip my blocks a couple times to get the right seams to be sewn together. If you take the time to make sure these seams nest at this point, when you're sewing the blocks together in the next step, they'll lay much nicer and flatter. When you take these to the ironing board to press, you're going to want to press them all the same. So make sure all of them look exactly the same. Now you just have to alternate the direction of these units to piece the row. I'm going to just sew all the pieces together. I'm going to sew units of 2 together, and then I will just take those units and just keep sewing. I'm not going to go to the ironing board between each set, but if you wanted to, you could sew 4 blocks and then press and then sew the 4 blocks together. I only want to go to the ironing board one more time, so I'm just going to keep sewing these until they're all together in one big row. Now it's time to press, and I'm going to press all my seams in one direction. I like to use a little bit of Mary Ellen's Best Press Spray. This helps the fabric cooperate a little bit better when I'm trying to get these seams to go in the one direction. I like to press it from the back side. That way I can control where the seams are going, and I don't accidentally mess up seams that were already pressed. We hope you will subscribe to our channel to keep up with our block of the month, share with your quilting friends, make a comment, and hit that like button. We love seeing pictures of your finished blocks on our Facebook page, so keep sharing those pictures. We love to see all the different color variations that you are making. Here is a picture of my 3 finished blocks. I love the way they turned out. I really like how the turquoise on the black background one kind of looks like little pops of color in there. I think that turned out really fun. Make sure to come back next month for block number 4. Thanks for watching and happy quilting!